Okay, I am Dr. Munmun Chattopadhyay and I'm going to teach you resting membrane potential and action potential. To know about the concepts of resting membrane potential or RMP and action potential or AP, we also need to know a little bit about sodium channels and potassium channels. Okay, and the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Okay, so I'm going to cover resting membrane potential, action potential, a little overview of this sodium and potassium channel and sodium potassium ATPase pump in 3 classes. Before going on to the introduction about the channels and the pump, I will talk a little bit about the membrane potential. Okay, what is membrane potential? It is basically the potential difference between the inside and outside of a membrane, and it is found in almost all cells of the body. So it is, since it's between the inside and outside of a cell, it is also known as transmembrane potential. Okay, so what do? Say this is a membrane. We put one recording electrode on the surface, one recording electrode in the interior, connected to a cathode ray oscilloscope via an amplifier. Okay, what I am connecting it to? Cathode ray oscilloscope. So I hope you have all studied cathode ray oscilloscope in physics. Okay, so what is happening? When one electrode is on the outside and one in the inside, we find that there is a deviation in the cathode ray oscilloscope. Okay, now by experiments we have found that the interior of the cell has negative charge, while the exterior has positive charge. This is interior, this is exterior. This is the membrane, and this membrane is permeable to potassium via leak channels and impermeable to sodium. Okay, so when we place one electrode here and one electrode here, we will find a potential difference and deviation of the CRO. Okay, now what is RMP? That is resting membrane potential. When the membrane is at rest, this membrane potential is known as resting membrane potential. So membrane potential recorded at rest. Now what happens when we give a stimulus? Say we have an excitable cell. Okay, excitable cell. It can be a nerve or a muscle or maybe glands. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to talk about nerve through this discussion. Okay, so we give a stimulus. The stimulus can be chemical, mechanical, electrical stimulus, but for experimental purposes, electrical stimulus is the best type of stimulus to excite a cell. So when we give a stimulus, initially what happens? We get electrotonic changes, then this will give rise to local response, and if the stimulus is of enough strength, we will get an action potential. Okay, we will all discuss this later. Okay, so what happens, depending upon the strength of the stimulus, either we will get an electrotonic change. If the stimulus is strong enough, we can get a local response, and if it is strong enough, we will get an action potential. That is strong enough to reach the threshold, we will get an action potential. Now we will talk about the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Okay, we need to know this because this is very important for the development of the resting membrane potential. You have got an idea what is membrane potential? Now, before going on to resting membrane potential, we need to know a little bit about the sodium potassium ATPase pump. It is basically a carrier protein. You have already done the classes on carrier proteins and intercellular communications, so I think you know a little bit about this. This is basically a prototype of primary active transport. What happens here is sodium potassium ATPase pump catalyzes the hydrolysis of ATP to ADP and uses that energy to extrude 3 sodium out of the cell and takes in 2 potassium into the cell. Okay, so what is happening? It is extruding 3 positive charges and taking in 2 positive charges. So there's a deficit of a positive charge and thus it is creating some electrical differences. Hence this is known as an electrogenic pump. Okay, with a coupling ratio of 3:2. It is extruding 3 positive charges while taking in 2 positive charges, hence creating an electrical difference. So it is known as the electrogenic pump, the coupling ratio of 3:2, and it creates a negativity inside. Okay, negativity inside. Okay. It is basically found in all over the body. Now let's go on to the structure. So this is the structure of the sodium potassium ATPase pump. It consists of an alpha subunit and a beta subunit. The alpha subunit is the part through which the sodium potassium exchange occurs and phosphorylation also occurs here. Okay, and the beta subunit is basically a glycoprotein and it has 3 glycosylation sites which may already be bound to glycoproteins. Okay, if there is separation of these 2 subunits, the function will be lost. So the beta subunit is important for the function of the alpha subunit. Here we see it has, the alpha subunit has 5 sites, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. This is the site, this is the sodium binding site, 2 is the potassium binding site, 3 is uabin binding site. Uabin is basically a glycoside which inhibits the sodium potassium ATPase pump. The 4 is the phosphorylation site and 5 is the ATP binding site. So what is happening when 3 sodium, okay, it's clear? Yeah, 3 sodium binds to the alpha subunit, the ATP gets converted to ADP and phosphate goes and binds to the phosphorylation site on the alpha subunit. Okay. Now due to this phosphate binding, this causes a conformational change in the alpha subunit and this results in extrusion of 3 sodium. Now after this, what happens? The potassium binds to the extracellular binding site of the alpha subunit. This leads to dephosphorylation. So what does dephosphorylation mean? This alpha subunit loses the phosphate. This leads to another conformational change, and the potassium enters the cell. Okay, so the sodium binds to the intracellular site, and due to phosphorylation, the conformational change occurs and sodium is extruded into the outside of the cell. Now the potassium binds to the extracellular site, causes dephosphorylation, leading to conformational change, and finally the potassium enters the cell. Okay, so this was the process in brief of how sodium potassium exchange occurs. Now what are the uses of the sodium potassium pump? Okay, main use is development and maintenance of RMP. We'll come to this. What it does is it has a direct contribution and an indirect contribution. Indirect contribution is just for about 4%, that is very minor, and it causes the direct contribution is very low. It's about 4%, and it just directly causes negativity inside the cell. And indirect, it has a massive contribution because it creates the concentration gradient for the ions, and this concentration gradient is important for the development of RMP. Okay. There are many other functions like transport of different solutes across the cell membrane by development of gradient. I think you have learned about this in secondary active transport. Okay. It also helps in maintenance of cell volume. You'll learn a little bit more about this in Gibbs-Tonen effect. It helps in signal transduction by moving ions. It helps in regulation of neural activity, and it also helps in acidification of gastric contents. Okay, now let's talk about RMP, or resting membrane potential. Under this, we will study about the development of RMP, diffusion potentials, and the several equations and theories, and maintenance of RMP. How RMP develops, how it is maintained, and the diffusion potentials and the different theories of this diffusion potentials and calculations. Okay, now what was RMP? RMP was basically the potential difference between the outside and inside of a cell when the cell is at rest or the cell is quiescent. That is, this is the potential difference between outside and inside when the cell is at rest. Okay, different tissues have different resting membrane potentials. Neurons have a resting membrane potential of -70 millivolt. while skeletal muscles have a resting membrane potential of minus 90 millivolt. And intestinal smooth muscles have a resting membrane potential of minus 50 millivolt. Okay, so you can see these are all in millivolts and these are all negative. This implies that the interior of cell is negative. So we have talked about this membrane. The outside surface is positive and the inside is negative. So for neurons, the interior is minus 70 millivolt negative with respect to the outside, skeletal muscles minus 90 millivolt negative with respect to the outside, and intestinal smooth muscles minus 50 millivolt negative with respect to the outside. Okay, so how does this potential develop, these distribution? How does this minus 70, we will mainly talk about neurons and the minus 70 millivolt. So how does this develop? How does this resting membrane potential develop? This basically depends upon two factors. This development of RMP depends upon two factors. First is the differential distribution of ions across the cell membrane, and second is differential permeability of the cell to different ions. So first is distribution of the ions, different distribution of the ions, and second is different permeability of the ions. So which ions are important? Sodium, potassium and chloride. Here we see the sodium is more in extracellular fluid and less in intracellular fluid. Potassium is less in extracellular fluid and more in intracellular fluid. And chloride is more in extracellular fluid and less is intracellular fluid. So you see on the different sides of the membrane, the ions are distributed differently. Here sodium 145 and inside sodium is 5. Potassium outside is 4 while inside it is 155. Chloride outside is 110 while inside it is about 10. Okay, so they are distributed differentially across the membrane. So here the tendency of sodium is to move inside from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, that is from ECF to ICF, from outside to inside. Similarly for potassium it is opposite. Potassium moves from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, that is from interior ICF to ECF, that is from interior to exterior. And chloride has a tendency to move from outside to inside. And the second point is differential permeability of the cell to the ions. That is, the potassium ion permeability and the sodium ion permeability are not same. What does permeability mean? Permeability is just the transport or movement of the ability of movement of the ions across the cell membrane. So permeability of potassium is much more than permeability of sodium. At rest, this is all about rest. When a stimulus is given, this permeability changes. But at rest, the permeability of potassium is much more than permeability of sodium because the presence of leaky potassium channels. Okay? And sodium channels are basically closed at rest. They only open when a stimulus is given. So these are the two factors which are responsible for development of resting membrane potential: differential distribution across cell membrane and differential permeability of cell. Okay, so the RMP depends upon the unequal distribution of ions and the different permeability of the ions. Among the ions we discussed, that is the sodium, potassium and chloride, the potassium is the major ion which is responsible for development of RMP. Okay, let's see how potassium contributes to the development of resting membrane potential. Now the concentration gradient of potassium is directed outwards, because the concentration in the cell is much more than the concentration outside. So the potassium tends to move out of the cell along its concentration gradient. Okay, so if positive charge is moving out of the cell, the interior of the cell becomes negative. But what is happening? The charge, the movement. So potassium is moving out, that is cations are moving out, and the interior of the cell becomes negative. But the amount of potassium efflux is not enough to cause changes in the concentration of potassium, but it is enough to cause changes in the charge. That is, when the potassium is going out of the cell, the extracellular concentration of potassium doesn't change much. That is, the concentration gradient is maintained. But the charge changes. That is, the inside becomes much more negative. Ideally, in nature, what happens if something becomes, if neutrality, electrical neutrality is disturbed, other components try to restore the electrical neutrality. This can be restored by sodium, chloride or anions. But in this case, what happens? None of these can actually restore the electrical neutrality. Why? Because the membrane is impermeable to sodium. So sodium cannot flow into the cell to counter the negativity, because the membrane doesn't allow the sodium to flow in. Now chloride. What is happening? The chloride cannot move against its concentration gradient. So it cannot flow out to counter the negativity. Chloride is more in the inside. So to maintain electrical negativity, the chloride, that is a negative ion, will have to move out of the cell. But since the concentration is more in the inside, it's more in the outside, the chloride cannot flow against its concentration gradient. And for negatively charged anions, they cannot flow out because the anions are large and cannot move through the plasma membrane. Okay, so what is happening after this? The interior of the cell goes on becoming negative. Now this negativity then tries to attract the outgoing sodium back into the cell. So the cell is negative. None of the other ions can help to restore normality. So the cell tries to attract the potassium back into the cell. Okay, so potassium is going out, creating negativity. The other ions cannot help, so the cell is trying to bring back the potassium into the cell. Okay, so at a point, what is happening? The potassium has two forces acting on it: the electrical potential and the chemical potential. What is the electrical potential? Electrical potential is due to the negativity inside the cell. It tries to bring potassium back into the cell. Okay, and chemical potential, what does it do? This is basically the concentration gradient. This tends to cause potassium efflux. So one force is trying to move the potassium out of the cell, and another force is trying to bring the potassium into the cell. So a point is reached where the electrical potential, which is trying to bring back the potassium into the cell, becomes equal to the chemical potential, that is the force that is trying to move the potassium out of the cell. So these forces are balanced. The outward force and the inward force both are balanced. So we get no negative movement of the potassium. A point is reached where there is no negative movement of the potassium. This is known as the equilibrium potential or the diffusion potential, And this equilibrium potential can be calculated by the Nernst equation. Recap what is happening. Potassium is moving out of the cell along its concentration gradient, but while moving out it creates a negativity inside. Due to this negativity, the potassium is being attracted back into the cell. So the forces acting on the potassium are the electrical potential, which is pulling it back into the cell, and the chemical potential, which is pulling it out of the cell. A point is reached where this chemical potential becomes equal to the electrical potential. That is, the outward force becomes equal to the inward force. Thus, there is no net movement of the potassium. This situation is known as equilibrium potential. Okay, and this equilibrium potential can be calculated by the Nernst equation. Okay, so how do we calculate it? This Nernst equation is basically, I will not tell you about the derivation of the Nernst equation here. You have already done that in your organic chemistry classes. If you want to do it, you can check out your books. If you want to revise it, you can check out your books. And if you want, I can leave a link for you which will explain the derivation of the Nernst equation. Now, what is happening? The electrochemical gradient is basically the chemical gradient and the electrical gradient. A point is reached, that is the equilibrium potential, when the electrochemical gradient becomes 0. So let's see. The electrochemical gradient, we are denoting it as mu x, is equal to RT log of concentration inside by concentration outside plus Zx into FVm. Okay, what is V? Vm? Vm is just the potential. Here we will denote it as Ek. Okay, so R is the gas constant, which is about 8.3. The T is absolute temperature. Xi is the concentration inside the cell. XO is the concentration outside the cell. Z is the valency, which is basically 1, valency of X, which is basically 1 here. F is Faraday, which is equal to 96,500 Coulomb. And Vm, we have already said, it is basically the equilibrium potential of potassium. Now, what is happening at the equilibrium? At equilibrium, the mu x, delta mu x becomes 0. So, we get Zx FVm, that is F into Ek, is equal to minus RT log of concentration inside by concentration outside. So, we get Z F into Ek is equal to RT log of concentration outside by inside. It is reversed because of this negative sign. Okay. Now, since we are considering the potassium ion, let us replace everything. We are getting Vm, that is Ek, is equal to RT by Fz into log of potassium concentration outside by potassium concentration inside. Okay. Now this, when you calculate this, comes out to be 61.5. And so the equation is 61.5 into log of ln of natural logarithm of potassium concentration outside by potassium concentration inside. It comes out to be minus 90 millivolt. So once again, this is the equation. The Ek is the equilibrium potential of potassium. RT, R is the gas constant, which is 8.3. T is the absolute temperature, which is 300 Kelvin. Then F is the Faraday, which is 96,500 Coulomb, and Z is the valency, which is 1 here. Okay, the concentration outside is 4 and inside is 155. On calculating, this comes out to be minus 90 millivolt. So the equilibrium potential calculated by Nernst equation for potassium is minus 90 millivolt. Nernst potential is basically the potential required to prevent the diffusion of the ion. So this amount of force will be required to prevent the potassium from moving. Okay. So here we calculated the equilibrium potential by Nernst equation. For Nernst equation calculation, we consider that the membrane is permeable only to that particular ion. It is impermeable to everything. It is permeable only to potassium. To calculate the equilibrium potential or Nernst potential of potassium, we have to assume that all the membrane is only permeable to potassium. Okay, so by this Nernst equation, we find when we assume that the membrane is permeable only to chloride, the equilibrium potential is minus 70 millivolt. And so in the similar way, the equilibrium potential by Nernst equation for sodium is plus 65 millivolt. Okay, for sodium, basically both the concentration and electrical gradient are directed inwards. Now what is happening? The potassium was minus 90 millivolt. Potassium tries to pull the membrane potential to its level, that is minus 90 millivolt, while sodium tries to pull its equilibrium potential. Okay, from here we see that potassium tries to pull the membrane potential towards minus 90 millivolt if it was acting alone. Sodium would be pulling the membrane potential to plus 65 millivolt if it was acting alone. The chloride cannot actually contribute anything to the resting membrane potential because it does not have any pump of its own, and it distributes itself along the surface in accordance with the RMP. Okay. Now, so what is happening? The RMP, we see that the RMP calculated is about minus 70 millivolt. So the RMP is much nearer to the equilibrium potential of potassium, which is minus 90. This is because normally the sodium will not contribute much to the RMP. We have talked about this earlier. This is just a review of that. The RMP is minus 70 millivolt. The equilibrium potential of potassium is minus 90 millivolt. And the equilibrium potential of sodium is plus 65 millivolt. From this we can see that the RMP is very near potassium. So the major contribution to RMP is by potassium. Sodium has very little contribution because sodium is normally impermeable and cannot flow into the cell by itself. The factor for potassium being the major contributor is because the concentration of potassium inside the cell is much higher than the concentration of sodium inside the cell. The sodium potassium ATPase pump basically extrudes the sodium and maintains this unequal distribution of sodium and potassium in the ICF and the ECF. Let's go on to the other theories of RMP generation. So Nernst equation says that the membrane is only permeable to when the membrane is only permeable to potassium, the equilibrium potential should be minus 90 millivolt, and thus the membrane potential should be minus 90 millivolt. But by measurement we see that the RMP is minus 70 millivolt. So by Nernst equation the RMP should have been equal to the equilibrium potential of potassium. So by this we can say that the RMP, that the membrane is not only permeable to potassium, there can be other contributions also. If the membrane was only permeable to potassium, the RMP should have been minus 90 millivolt. Now this can be explained by Coleman-Kahn's or Coleman constant field equation. So the disparity between the equilibrium potential of potassium and the RMP can be explained by this Goldman-Katz or Goldman constant field equation. This assumes that the membrane is permeable to several ions, to not just potassium ion. It is permeable to several ions. Basically 2 univalent ions, univalent positive ions and 1 univalent negative ions. Goldman-Katz equation is basically a modified Nernst equation. Nernst equation says that the membrane is permeable to only one ion, while the Goldman-Katz equation says that the membrane is permeable to several ions. So according to Nernst equation, the RMP will only be contributed by potassium, while by the Goldman-Katz or Goldman constant field equation, the RMP should be contributed by several ions. Now what is the equation? See, this is the equation. The RMP is RT by F into natural log of permeability of potassium into potassium outside plus permeability of sodium into sodium outside plus permeability of chloride into chloride inside. Okay, this is an anion. Divided by permeability of potassium into potassium inside plus permeability of sodium into sodium inside plus permeability of chloride into chloride outside. Okay, so these are natural gas constant, absolute temperature, Faraday's. Now, and this whole thing, this RMP, thus not only depends upon the concentration of the ions, now it also depends upon the permeability of the ions. Okay, so it depends upon the permeability, concentration and polarity of the ions, which determines whether the how the equation will be arranged. Now by this method we get that RMP is equal to minus 70 millivolt, which is very close to the recorded value or equal to the recorded value. So we see how RMP calculation by Nernst equation, which assumes the permeability of only one ion, is not totally accurate, but the RMP calculated by this Goldman-Katz constant field equation, which takes into account the permeability of three ions like potassium, sodium and chloride, the RMP comes out to be minus 70 millivolt. Okay. There are some other theories like Hodgkin-Huxley equivalent circuit theory, quad conductance theory. These take into account the conductance of each ion. Okay, so we assume that the ions are arranged in parallel and each channel has a different conductance. Okay, you don't need to know these in details. You need to know the Nernst equation and the Goldman constant field equation thoroughly. Okay, let's talk about the role of the sodium potassium ATPase pump in development of the resting membrane potential. We have already talked about this. The sodium potassium pump is an electrogenic pump which extrudes 3 sodium, that is 3 positive ions, and takes in 2 potassium, that is 2 positive ions, and creates a negativity inside. So it creates a negativity inside and it also creates a differential distribution of sodium and potassium in the cell and outside the cell. So due to this sodium potassium ATPase pump, potassium is more inside than outside and sodium is more outside than inside. Okay, so sodium potassium pump is very important. First, it creates a small negativity inside, and secondly, it creates the concentration gradient of the sodium and the potassium by distributing them unequally across the membrane. Inequally across the membrane. Now, the sodium potassium pump has a direct role and an indirect role in the development of RMP. What is the direct role? The direct role is very small. It basically contributes to negativity inside. So, it contributes a little bit of negativity inside. Okay, about 4 millivolt, minus 4 millivolt. So, it's a small direct role. But the indirect role is very important. Indirectly, it maintains or creates the resting membrane potential by creating the differential distribution of sodium and potassium. So the main role is indirect, by which it creates a unequal distribution of sodium and potassium across the membrane. Thus, due to unequal distribution, a concentration gradient is present, and this helps in RMP generation. We have already seen why we get an RMP due to this concentration gradient. Okay, so sodium potassium ATPase pump is very important. If the sodium potassium ATPase pump is blocked due to some reason, not much immediate effect, because the direct role is small, that is, some amount of negativity will be lost. But since this indirect role is very important, over time blocking of the sodium potassium ATPase pump will completely abolish the membrane potential, that is the resting membrane potential. So over time this concentration gradient will be lost, this unequal distribution will be lost, this concentration gradient will be lost, and as a result the RMP will be lost, and that means cell death. Okay, so prolonged blocking of the sodium potassium ATPase pump is not really conducive. Okay, now how do we maintain the membrane potential? The membrane potential is maintained by the sodium potassium pump, sodium potassium ATPase pump. So maintenance of MP, this is basically by the sodium potassium ATPase pump. So sodium potassium ATPase pump is important both for development of membrane potential and maintenance of membrane potential. Okay, now you need to know two things. What happens, those two bits of info, what happens if ECF potassium changes? If ECF potassium changes, this will have an effect on RMP, because the RMP is mainly produced by potassium. We have already seen it has some contribution of sodium and chloride as seen by the Goldman constant field equation, but the major is by potassium. So if ECF potassium increases, that is potassium outside increases or changes, there is some effect of RMP. Now if ECF sodium changes, there is not much effect on RMP because its contribution is very less. But sodium ECF changes causes effect on action potential. We will talk about this later. Okay, so ECF potassium causes effect on RMP, but ECF sodium doesn't cause much effect on RMP. Okay, and another point is, what is restless RMP or fluctuating RMP? Here basically all this time we have talked that the RMP is fixed at minus 70 millivolt for a nerve cell. Okay, but sometimes we see that the RMP fluctuates. This is here, this we see RMP fluctuates. Okay, so here 40 minus 40 millivolt, here minus 60 millivolt. This is known as fluctuating RMP or restless RMP. This is found in intestinal cells. You will be taught about this in much details later. Okay, and development of basal electrical rhythm. Okay, BER. On to the next topic, that is which is the Gibbs-Donan equilibrium. Let us recap what is resting membrane potential. Resting membrane potential is basically the membrane potential recorded at rest. And what is membrane potential? Membrane potential is basically the potential difference recorded between the interior and outside of the cell. The resting membrane potential is developed and maintained due to the unequal distribution of the ions across the membrane and the differential permeability of the ions across the membrane. Sodium is more outside, potassium is more inside, and the membrane is much more permeable to potassium by leaky potassium channels as compared to sodium. Now by Nernst equation we find that the equilibrium potential is of potassium is minus 90 millivolt. By Nernst equation assumes that the membrane is only permeable to potassium. So by Nernst equation the RMP, resting membrane potential, should have been minus 90 millivolt, but it is not minus 90 millivolt. It is calculated to be it is measured to be minus 70 millivolt. So this shows that the membrane is not only permeable to potassium, it has some contribution also of the other ions, that is the sodium ion and the chloride ion. So we have a new equation, that is the Goldman-Kalms constant field equation, which takes into account the permeability of all the ions and calculates the RMP from there. Okay, and we get minus 70 millivolt. And sodium potassium ATPase pump is very essential for development and maintenance of the resting membrane potential. Now let's go on to Gibbs-Donan equilibrium. These are two compartments containing ions which is separated by a semi-permeable membrane. This compartment A has potassium, chloride and an anion. Compartment B has potassium and chloride, and it is separated by the semi-permeable membrane. This semi-permeable membrane allows the movement of potassium and chloride but not the movement of anion. Okay. Initially we assume that these two compartments are electrically neutral. So sum of anions and cations on compartment A is equal to the sum of anions and cations on compartment B. So from this we can say that the potassium in compartment A is equal to the potassium in compartment B. Okay. But chloride in compartment A plus the anion in compartment A is equal to the chloride in compartment B, because here see there is potassium here and potassium here, only one type of cation. But for anion, compartment A has two types of anions, while compartment B has only one type of anion. Chloride plus anion is equal to chloride. So this implies that the chloride in A is less than the chloride in B. Okay, so compartment A has less chloride, compartment B has more chloride. So chloride starts moving from B to A along the concentration gradient. Now what is happening here? More negative charge has come into A. Chloride is moving along the concentration gradient, but due to this movement, the compartment A contains more anion. Now to counter this, potassium moves in. Okay, to make this electrically neutral, potassium moves here. So the aim is to make this electroneutral. Okay, so at the end of this achievement of equilibrium, we find that the number of ions in A is much more than the number of ions in B, because ions A has some chloride which has moved in from B along the concentration gradient and some potassium which has moved in from B to maintain the electroneutrality. So compartment A has more ions, more number of ions. This has less number of ions. As a result, this is osmotically more active and this is osmotically less active. Okay, So since there are more osmotically active particles here, the osmolality increases and this becomes osmotically more active. And here the number of particles are less, therefore it is osmotically less active. I hope you know all about osmolality and osmolarity. You have done this in your class 11 and 12 curriculum. I hope you have done this in your curriculum. Okay, so coming back to this is more osmotically active, hence it draws in fluid from here. Okay, it draws in fluid from the compartment B. This is basically the Gibbs-Donan effect. Now what is the Gibbs? So what does the Gibbs-Donan equilibrium say? So what is this effect? When basically the Gibbs-Donan equilibrium, this says that when two solutions are separated by a semi-permeable membrane, that is a membrane which is permeable to some ions but impermeable to some, the diffusible anions and cations are distributed in a concentration ratio which can be calculated by Gibbs-Donan equation. Okay, and what is the Gibbs-Donan equation? The Gibbs-Donan equation is this. Potassium in A by potassium in B is equal to chloride in B by chloride in A, which comes out to be potassium in A into chloride in A is equal to potassium in B into chloride in B. So this is the Gibbs-Donan equation which gives the concentration ratio of the diffusible ions. And to repeat, what is Gibbs-Donan equilibrium? When two solutions separated by a semi-permeable membrane, that is a membrane which is permeable to some ions but impermeable to others, the diffusible anions and cations are distributed in a concentration ratio which can be calculated by this Gibbs-Donan equation. Okay. Let's go on to some application of the Gibbs-Donan equilibrium concept. In many compartments of the body, that is mainly the intracellular compartment, we find that there are many large anions, non-diffusible, non-permeant or impermeant ions, large anions. These cannot move out of the membrane on their own. Thus, these compartments tend to draw in water osmotically because, as we said, the compartment which has the non-permeant ion will be more osmotically active. Okay, let's see the diagram again. This compartment, it has this non-permeant ion and it is more osmotically active, and thus this will draw in more water. If this draws in more water, what will happen? This will swell. So if water flows into the cell will swell, and ultimately that will lead to cell burst and cell death. But this is prevented by the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Okay, so due to why is the cell swelling? Basic thing is the compartment has more number of osmotically active particles, more number of particles. Now what does sodium potassium ATPase pump do? It extrudes 3 potassium, that is 3 particles, and takes in 2 particles. So the net effect is reduction in the number of particles inside the cell. So this becomes less osmotically active and thus cell swelling is prevented. Now another function is this Donan effect also contributes to RMP, resting membrane potential, by helping in the unequal distribution of ions across the cell membrane. Okay. So this was all about the resting membrane potential. Next class will be on the action potential and a little bit about the sodium and potassium channels. Action potential, actually I'll take more than 2 classes.